Welcome to Monk's Temple. Have you noticed how some people in their later years seem to glow from the inside? You see them at the grocery store, or maybe in your own neighborhood, and there's something about them that stops you. They move slower perhaps, but there's a lightness to their step that younger people rarely possess. Their eyes hold a kind of peace that no amount of money or achievement can buy. And then there are others who seem to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders, even though their active working days are behind them. What makes the difference? This question has fascinated me for years, and I've come to believe that the answer lies not in what we gain as we age, but in what we finally have the courage to release. After 7 decades of living, most of us have collected quite a load. Not just physical possessions, though those certainly accumulate, but expectations, resentments, fears, identities that no longer fit, relationships that have become obligations, memories that have turned into prisons. We carry all of this thinking it's just part of life, never stopping to ask whether we could simply set some of it down. The ancient wisdom of Buddhism offers us a different way of understanding these later years. Not as a time of decline, though the body does change, not as a waiting room for whatever comes next, but as a unique season of liberation. The Buddha himself taught that the root of human suffering is attachment, clinging to things that by their very nature cannot last. And if that's true, then the later years of life present us with an extraordinary opportunity. We get to practice releasing. We get to discover who we are beneath all the layers of having and doing and achieving. We get to taste what it means to simply be. Over the next hours together, we're going to explore 8 truths that, when fully understood and embraced, can transform these years from a burden into a gift. These aren't abstract philosophical ideas. They're practical, lived wisdom from a tradition that has been studying the nature of human suffering and freedom for over 2,500 years. And I'll be sharing stories, not just from ancient texts, but from ordinary people I've known and worked with, people just like you, who discovered in their 70s and 80s that it's never too late to learn to live lightly. So settle in, find a comfortable position, perhaps make yourself a cup of tea. This is your time. This is an invitation to consider what you might be ready to release. There's a psychological concept that psychologists call the arrival fallacy. It's the mistaken belief that once we arrive at some future destination, once we achieve this goal or acquire that thing or receive love from that particular person, then finally we'll be happy. The problem is that arrival never quite happens. We get the promotion and immediately start worrying about the next one. We buy the house and soon notice everything that's wrong with it. The person we thought would complete us turns out to have their own needs and complications. I once worked with a woman named Helen who was 73 when I met her. She was brilliant, sharp as a tack, with a wicked sense of humor that could fill a room. But Helen was miserable, and the source of her misery was her daughter who lived across the country. Every Sunday, Helen would call her daughter, and every Sunday, the call would last about 7 minutes. Her daughter was busy with her own family, her own career, her own life. Helen would hang up the phone and spend the rest of the week feeling hurt, resentful, and deeply alone. She'd replay the conversation, noticing how her daughter sounded rushed, how she didn't ask about Helen's health, how she always had to go. By the time the next Sunday came around, Helen had worked herself into such a state of anticipation and resentment that the actual call was doomed before it began. One afternoon, Helen said to me, "I just want her to love me the way I love her." Is that too much to ask? And I said, "Helen, what if her love just looks different? What if you're waiting for a train that left the station 20 years ago, and meanwhile, you're missing all the beautiful sunsets right outside your window. This is the first truth that Buddhism offers us. The happiness we seek from others was never theirs to give. The Buddha taught that wanting, what he called tanha or craving, is like drinking salt water. It promises to quench your thirst but only makes you thirstier. When we place the responsibility for our happiness on other people, we give away something precious. We give away our own power. We become dependent on forces we cannot control. We wait, and waiting is a form of suffering. Think about it. How many hours of your life have you spent waiting? Waiting for the phone to ring. Waiting for appreciation that never came. Waiting for someone to notice your effort, your sacrifice, your love. And while you were waiting, life was happening. The sunlight was warming your kitchen floor. Your tea was getting cold. The bird outside your window was singing a song you didn't hear because you were too busy listening for a sound that hadn't come. Buddhism offers us a radical alternative. It's called upekkha, often translated as equanimity or balance. It's the ability to rest in your own being, complete in yourself, regardless of what others do or don't do. This doesn't mean you stop loving people. It doesn't mean you stop wanting connection. It means you stop needing others to be a particular way in order for you to be okay. There's a story about a monk who lived alone in a small hut at the edge of a village. Every morning, children from the village would walk past his hut on their way to school, laughing and shouting. Every morning, the monk would smile and wave. One day, a visitor asked him, "Doesn't their noise disturb your meditation?" The monk laughed. "Why would it disturb me? Their joy is their joy. My peace is my peace. They are not the same thing." This is the freedom that becomes available to us after 70. The frantic doing of earlier decades has slowed. The pressure to prove ourselves has diminished. We have the time and the perspective to finally ask the question, what if I'm already complete? What if nothing is missing? What if happiness isn't something I need to wait for, but something I can cultivate right now, in this very breath, with whatever is present? Helen eventually came to this understanding. Not overnight, and not without struggle. But gradually, she began to shift her attention. She started noticing the small pleasures of her days. The way the morning light fell on her African violets. The satisfaction of a perfectly brewed cup of Earl Grey. The phone calls with her niece that actually lasted an hour and left her feeling warm. She still called her daughter on Sundays, and the calls were still short. But now, when she hung up, she didn't spend the week in mourning. She simply returned to her own life, her own peace, her own completeness. She had stopped waiting. And in stopping, she had finally arrived. If this teaching resonates with you, if you recognize in yourself some of that waiting that Helen experienced, please consider subscribing to Monk's Temple. We explore these ancient wisdom teachings together, and there's something powerful about having companions on the journey. Just click the subscribe button below. It helps us continue creating content like this, and it connects you with a community of others who are also learning to live more lightly. Let me tell you about a man named George. George was 76, a retired high school principal who had spent his entire career managing people and solving problems. He was good at it. He had a calm authority that made students behave and teachers feel supported. But retirement brought an unexpected challenge. George's younger brother, Richard, had always been difficult. He'd had problems with money, with relationships, with alcohol. While George was working, the distance between them felt manageable. They lived in different states, and George could limit their interactions to holidays and occasional phone calls. But after retirement, Richard started calling more often. And those calls always followed the same pattern. Richard would complain for an hour about his health, his finances, his grown children who never visited. George would listen, offer advice that was never taken, and feel increasingly drained. After each call, George would sit in his favorite chair, staring at the wall, unable to muster the energy for anything else. His wife noticed. His grown children noticed. But George felt trapped. "He's my brother," he said. "I can't just abandon him." Buddhism offers a profound teaching about compassion that many people misunderstand. They think compassion means always saying yes, always being available, always putting others' needs before your own. But the Buddha taught something more nuanced. He spoke about the importance of protecting your own mind, your own heart, as the foundation for any genuine care you might offer others. On an airplane, they tell you to put on your own oxygen mask before helping others. This isn't selfishness. It's basic wisdom. You cannot give what you do not have. There's a concept in Buddhist psychology called mental proliferation. It's the tendency of the mind to take a single stimulus and spin it into an elaborate story. Richard calls George. That's one thing. But George's mind takes that call and spins it into obligation, guilt, resentment, exhaustion. The call itself is just a call. The suffering comes from what George adds to it. After 70, your energy is not the infinite resource it once seemed. It's more like a carefully tended garden. Some visitors to that garden bring seeds and sunshine. Others bring weeds and rocks. You have the right, indeed the responsibility, to decide who gets access. I once heard a story about a Zen master who was approached by a man seeking guidance. The man was angry, demanding, full of complaints about his life and everyone in it. The master listened patiently for a while, then said, "I'm sorry, but I cannot help you today." The man was outraged. "You're supposed to be compassionate. You're supposed to help everyone." The master replied calmly, "Would you accept a gift that was poisoned?" The man sputtered, "Of course not. Why would I?" The master smiled. "Then why would you ask me to accept your anger?" This story points to something essential. Compassion does not require us to absorb the toxicity of others. We can hold genuine care in our hearts while also maintaining healthy boundaries. We can wish someone well without wishing them into our living room every afternoon. George eventually made a difficult decision. He told Richard that he loved him, that he always would, but that their phone calls were becoming too much. He suggested they limit their conversations to once a month, and he encouraged Richard to find a counselor who could offer the kind of support George wasn't trained to provide. Richard was angry at first. He accused George of being selfish, of abandoning family. George sat with that anger, felt the weight of it, but didn't pick it up. He let Richard have his reaction without making it his own. And something surprising happened. After a few months, Richard did find a counselor. He joined a support group. Their monthly calls, while still not easy, became more balanced. George could actually listen now, without the weight of resentment and exhaustion, because he wasn't carrying the whole load alone. Protecting your peace is not selfish. It's sacred. It's recognizing that your remaining years are precious and deserve to be filled with connections that nourish rather than deplete. It's understanding that sometimes the most compassionate thing you can do for someone is to let them find their own strength instead of always leaning on yours. I want to tell you about Eleanor, a woman I met when she was 81. Eleanor lived alone in a house she'd occupied for over 50 years. It was the house where she'd raised her children, where her husband had died, where every corner held a memory. And every corner also held an object. Eleanor's house was so full that you could barely walk through it without bumping into something. China cabinets crammed with dishes that hadn't been used in decades. Closets stuffed with clothes that no longer fit. Boxes of photographs, letters, children's artwork, holiday decorations, broken appliances waiting to be fixed, magazines waiting to be read. Eleanor told me she couldn't get rid of anything because everything held meaning. This was my mother's vase. This was the lamp from our first apartment. These are my daughter's baby shoes. But when I asked her how she felt in her home, she paused for a long time. Then she said quietly, "Tired. I feel tired all the time." What Eleanor didn't realize was that her home had become a museum of her own life, and she was the curator, the janitor, and the prisoner all at once. Every object demanded something from her. Attention, memory, the weight of preservation. There was no space for the present because every surface was covered by the past. Buddhism teaches the principle of anicca, impermanence. Everything that arises passes away. Everything that is gathered eventually scatters. This isn't a pessimistic teaching. It's a realistic one. When we try to hold on to things that are by their nature passing, we create suffering for ourselves. We exhaust ourselves trying to stop the ocean's tide. There's a story about a monk who carried a single bowl. That was it. One bowl for receiving food, for drinking water, for washing. When people asked him why he owned so little, he said, "Everything I own requires something from me. I'd rather give my attention to what matters." Think about your own home. Do you feel peace when you walk through it, or do you feel a vague sense of overwhelm? Do you see surfaces or storage? Do you have room to breathe? I once worked with a woman named Margaret who had a different kind of clutter. Her home was actually quite tidy, minimal even. But her mind was another story. Margaret carried grudges like precious heirlooms. There was the neighbor who'd insulted her 40 years ago at a block party. There was her sister who'd forgotten her birthday when they were both in their 20s. There was her late husband's business partner who'd cheated them in a deal half a century past. Margaret could recite every detail of these old wounds as if they'd happened yesterday. And every time she told these stories, which was often, she'd feel the same anger, the same hurt, as fresh as the day it occurred. Buddhism has a teaching about the two arrows. The first arrow is the actual event, the original hurt. That arrow strikes, and it hurts. No one can avoid first arrows entirely. They're part of being human. But the second arrow is what we add afterward. The replaying, the rehearsing, the reliving. The second arrow is optional. It's the one we shoot into our own wound, over and over, keeping it from healing. Margaret had been shooting second arrows at herself for decades. The original hurts were long past. The people involved were mostly dead. But Margaret kept the wounds alive through constant attention. She had turned her mind into a museum of grievances, and she was the only visitor. The Buddha offered a practice called letting go that is deceptively simple. You notice what you're holding. You feel the weight of it in your hands, in your heart. And then, gently, you open your fingers. You let it fall. This doesn't mean the object or memory disappears. It means it no longer occupies your hands, your attention, your present moment. Eleanor eventually began the slow process of releasing her possessions. She didn't do it all at once. That would have been too overwhelming. She started with one drawer, then one closet, then one room. She kept some things, the ones that truly brought her joy or held irreplaceable meaning. The rest she let go of with gratitude, thanking each object for its service before passing it along. And as the physical space in her home opened up, something else opened up too. She had more energy. She could breathe. She sat in her living room one day and noticed, for the first time in years, the way the afternoon light made patterns on the empty floor. There was room now, room for light, for presence, for peace. Margaret's journey was different. She couldn't donate her grudges to a thrift store. But she could practice forgiveness, not as a way of pretending the hurts never happened, but as a way of releasing herself from their ongoing grip. She began with small ones, the neighbor from 40 years ago. She sat quietly, brought the memory to mind, and said silently, "I forgive you. I release this. I no longer need to carry it." At first, it felt false, performative. But gradually, she noticed that the memory, when it arose, had less charge. It was still there, but it didn't hurt the same way. She had stopped shooting the second arrow. After 70, you have the opportunity to clear out the museums of both your home and your heart. You don't need to keep everything you've ever owned or every story you've ever told yourself. You can choose lightness over preservation. You can create space, physical and emotional, for whatever is beautiful and true in this present moment. The past will still be there, in its way. But it won't be blocking the doorway to now. I want to share with you a conversation I had with a man named Frank. Frank was 79, a former athlete who'd played college football and stayed active his whole life. But now his knees were giving out, his back hurt most days, and he'd recently been diagnosed with a heart condition that required medication and careful monitoring. Frank was angry. He told me his body had betrayed him. He looked in the mirror and saw a stranger, someone old and diminished, not the strong young man he still felt like inside. "I don't know who this person is," he said, gesturing at himself. "This isn't me." Frank's experience is common. We identify so strongly with our bodies, with their strength and appearance and capabilities, that when they begin to change, we feel we're losing ourselves. But Buddhism offers a different perspective. The body is not who you are. It's more like a house you're living in temporarily. And like any house, it ages. The roof leaks. The paint peels. The floors creak. But you, the resident, the one who notices these changes, remain. There's a teaching story about a monk who was asked, "What is your greatest fear?" He replied, "Nothing." The questioner pressed him. "Surely you fear pain. Surely you fear death." The monk smiled. "Pain is just sensation. Death is just change. What I am cannot be hurt. What I am cannot die." This doesn't mean we pretend not to feel physical discomfort or pretend not to grieve the loss of abilities. Those feelings are real and worthy of acknowledgement. But beneath them, there's something more fundamental. There's awareness itself, the simple capacity to know what's happening. And that awareness doesn't age. It doesn't weaken. It doesn't get wrinkles. After 70, your body becomes a powerful teacher if you let it. It teaches you patience when you can't move as fast. It teaches you acceptance when you can't do what you once could. It teaches you to ask for help, which is itself a form of humility and connection. It teaches you that you are not your capabilities, but something deeper, something that remains even as capabilities change. I once met a woman named Rose at a meditation retreat. Rose was 86 and used a walker to get around. She moved slowly, carefully, but her eyes sparkled with an aliveness that many younger people lack. I asked her how she maintained such peace given her physical limitations. She laughed and said, "Honey, my body has been trying to kill me for 20 years. So far, it hasn't succeeded. Every day I wake up is a victory. Every breath I take is a gift. My body may be falling apart, but the one who notices it falling apart, that one is just fine." Rose had discovered something essential. She had stopped identifying with the changing and started resting in the unchanging. She still took her medications. She still went to doctors. She still felt pain and frustration. But underneath all of that, there was a ground of peace that couldn't be shaken because it wasn't made of anything that could break. Think about your own experience. Have you noticed that the part of you that reads these words, that understands them, that has opinions about them, that part doesn't seem to age? Your body changes. Your mind changes, memory, speed of thought. But awareness itself, the simple knowing presence that witnesses all of this, that remains constant. That's what the Buddha was pointing to when he spoke of our true nature. It's unborn, undying, untouched by the changes of time. This doesn't mean we ignore the body or neglect it. On the contrary, we care for it with wisdom and kindness, knowing it's the vehicle through which we experience this life. But we stop expecting it to be what it once was. We stop fighting against its natural aging. We make peace with its limitations and appreciate its continued service. A 70-year-old body that has carried you through decades of life, through joy and sorrow, through work and love, through countless meals and conversations and sunrises, that body deserves your gratitude, not your resentment. It's done its best. It's still doing its best. And you, the awareness that inhabits it, you get to choose how you relate to its changes. Frank eventually came to a different relationship with his body. It happened gradually, through small moments of acceptance. One day, walking to his mailbox, he noticed the beauty of the autumn leaves and realized he'd been so focused on his aching knees that he'd almost missed them. He stopped, leaned on his cane, and just looked. The leaves were brilliant red and gold. The air was crisp. The sky was impossibly blue. And Frank thought, my knees hurt, but look at this. Just look at this. In that moment, he wasn't his painful knees. He was the one seeing the leaves, feeling the air, appreciating the sky. That awareness, was perfectly fine. Let me tell you about Harold. Harold was 82 and proud of his knowledge. He'd been a history professor, had written several books, and could hold forth on a remarkable range of topics. But Harold had a problem. Nobody wanted to have conversations with him anymore. His children avoided calling because every call turned into a lecture. His grandchildren rolled their eyes when he corrected their facts. Even his old colleagues from the university, when they met for lunch, found themselves steering clear of certain topics to avoid Harold's corrections. Harold didn't understand why. He was just sharing what he knew. Wasn't knowledge meant to be shared? But here's what Harold missed. Knowledge, when it becomes rigid, closes doors. It stops being a bridge and becomes a wall. The other person doesn't feel educated. They feel diminished. And Harold, without realizing it, had stopped learning anything new. His mind was like a library where no new books were ever added. He just kept rereading the old ones. Buddhism has a concept called beginner's mind. It's the quality of approaching each moment, each person, each experience, as if for the first time. Not because you've forgotten what you know, but because you recognize that every moment is genuinely new. The person you're talking to today is not the same person you talked to yesterday. The flower blooming in your garden this morning is not the same flower you saw yesterday. Even you, reading these words right now, are not quite the same as you were when you started reading. Cells have died and been replaced. Thoughts have come and gone. The river of experience flows continuously, never repeating exactly. When we approach life with beginner's mind, something magical happens. We become learners again. And learning, genuine learning, keeps the spirit flexible and alive. It doesn't matter what you learn. It could be a language, a musical instrument, a new recipe, a different way of arranging flowers. It could be learning about your neighbor's life, really listening instead of waiting to share your own story. It could be learning to see the familiar with fresh eyes, the street you've walked 1,000 times. What do you notice today that you never noticed before? There's a story about a pottery teacher who divided her class into 2 groups. She told the first group, "You will be graded on the quantity of pots you produce. The more you make, the better your grade." She told the second group, "You will be graded on the quality of one single pot. It must be perfect." At the end of the semester, the teacher gathered the students to see the results. The first group had produced hundreds of pots, some clumsy, some beautiful, but all of them the result of constant practice. The second group had produced almost nothing. They'd spent the entire semester theorizing about perfection, planning their one perfect pot, but never actually creating it because they were afraid it wouldn't be good enough. The lesson is simple. Learning happens through doing, through trying, through failing, through trying again. The first group learned pottery. The second group learned nothing but fear. After 70, you have a choice. You can be the expert, the one who already knows, the one who corrects others. Or you can be the beginner, curious, open, willing to be surprised. One path leads to isolation and stagnation. The other leads to connection and aliveness. I knew a woman named Phyllis who, at 77, decided to learn to play the piano. Her husband had played, and after he died, she found herself missing the music that had filled their home. She'd never touched a keyboard in her life. Her daughters thought she was being impractical. "Mom, at your age, why bother? You'll never be good." Phyllis replied, "I don't need to be good. I just need to be playing." She found a young college student who gave her lessons for cheap. Every Tuesday afternoon, Phyllis would sit at her old upright piano and struggle through scales and simple melodies. Her fingers were stiff. She made countless mistakes. But something happened during those hours that surprised her. She wasn't thinking about her grief. She wasn't worrying about her health. She wasn't replaying old regrets. She was completely present, focused on the next note, the next chord. It was the most alive she'd felt in years. After a year of lessons, Phyllis could play a few simple songs. She wasn't good by any objective standard. But when she played, her face glowed with a kind of joy that had nothing to do with skill and everything to do with presence. This is the gift of beginner's mind. It returns you to now. It interrupts the endless replay of old tapes and opens you to what's actually happening. It reminds you that life is not a problem to be solved but a mystery to be explored. And exploration doesn't require expertise. It only requires curiosity. So what might you be curious about? What have you always wanted to try but told yourself it was too late? What could you approach today as if for the first time? The breakfast you eat every morning, what would you notice if you really tasted it? The person you've lived with for decades, what might you learn about them if you really listened? Your own mind, your own heart, what new territory remains to be discovered? I want to tell you about a man named Arthur. Arthur was 84 and had been a successful businessman, the kind of person who made things happen. He'd built companies, managed hundreds of employees, made decisions that affected thousands of lives. Now, in retirement, Arthur was miserable. He had no one to manage, nothing to build, no problems to solve. He tried golf and found it boring. He tried travel and found it exhausting. He tried volunteering and found it unsatisfying because he wasn't in charge. Arthur's identity had been so wrapped up in doing that he had no idea how to simply be. One day, Arthur's grandson came to visit. The boy was 6 years old and full of questions. "Grandpa, why is the sky blue? Grandpa, where do clouds go at night? Grandpa, why do leaves change color?" Arthur found himself frustrated by these questions. He didn't know the answers. He'd spent his life focused on business, not on clouds or leaves. But the boy didn't care about correct answers. He just wanted to wonder together. He wanted to lie on the grass and look up and imagine. Arthur, lying on the grass, felt ridiculous. He hadn't lain on grass in decades. But as he looked up at the sky, something shifted. He noticed the way clouds moved, slowly, without purpose, without destination. They just drifted, changing shape, responding to winds he couldn't feel. And Arthur thought, I've spent my whole life pushing against things. What would it be like to just drift for a while? Buddhism teaches about the principle of upekkha, often translated as equanimity, but sometimes called letting be. It's the ability to allow things to unfold without constantly trying to control them. This doesn't mean passivity or resignation. It means recognizing that there are forces larger than your personal will, and that fighting them exhausts you without changing them. The river flows. You can swim against it and wear yourself out, or you can float with it and arrive somewhere you never expected. After 70, life invites you to shift from doing to being. Not because doing is wrong, but because being has its own gifts. Presence. Receptivity. Wonder. The capacity to receive life rather than always trying to shape it. There's a story about a Zen master who was asked, "What did you do before enlightenment?" He replied, "I chopped wood and carried water." "And what do you do now?" the questioner asked. "I chop wood and carry water." The questioner was confused. Then what's the difference? The master smiled. Before, I was chopping wood and carrying water. Now, I am chopping wood and carrying water. The difference was presence. Before enlightenment, he did his tasks while his mind was elsewhere, planning, worrying, judging. After enlightenment, he was fully there, in the wood, in the water, in the simple activity of the moment. Nothing else had changed. Everything had changed. Think about your daily activities. Eating a meal. Washing dishes. Walking to the mailbox. Sitting with a cup of tea. Are you fully there, or is your mind somewhere else? Are you doing these things, or are you being with them? The difference may seem subtle, but it's the difference between a life that feels like a series of tasks to complete and a life that feels like a continuous unfolding of experience. Arthur began to practice this. Not all at once, but in small moments. When he drank his morning coffee, he tried to actually taste it instead of reading the newspaper. When he walked to get his mail, he tried to feel the ground beneath his feet instead of thinking about his next project. When his grandson visited, he tried to really listen to the questions instead of trying to answer them. And gradually, something shifted. The boredom that had plagued him began to dissolve. In its place, a kind of richness emerged, the richness of actually being present for his own life. One afternoon, Arthur and his grandson were sitting on the porch watching a thunderstorm roll in. The sky darkened. The wind picked up. The first fat drops of rain began to fall. The boy said, "Grandpa, is the storm angry?" Arthur thought about giving a meteorological explanation, about high and low pressure systems, about warm and cold fronts. Instead, he said, "I don't think so. I think it's just being a storm. That's what storms do." The boy nodded, satisfied. And Arthur realized he had just received a teaching. Storms don't try to be storms. They just are. Trees don't try to grow. They just grow. Rivers don't try to flow. They just flow. Maybe, at 84, he could learn to just be Arthur, without trying to be anything else. I want to share with you something I learned from a gardener. She was 92 years old and had been tending the same plot of land for over 60 years. Her garden was legendary in the community, riotous with color, heavy with vegetables, alive with bees and birds. I asked her what her secret was. She thought for a moment, then said, "Compost. Everything that dies, everything that fails, everything that's left over, it all goes back into the soil. Nothing is wasted. The rotten tomatoes, the faded flowers, the leaves that fall, they all become food for next year's growth." This is a powerful image for how we might relate to our own histories, especially the parts we wish were different. Mistakes. Regrets. Failures. Losses. We tend to see these as pure negatives, things to be buried and forgotten. But what if they could be composted? What if they could become the very soil from which new growth emerges? Buddhism teaches about the nature of suffering, dukkha, and its relationship to wisdom. The Buddha didn't teach that we should avoid suffering. He taught that we should understand it, learn from it, and through that understanding, find freedom. Suffering, when wisely related to, becomes a teacher. It shows us what we're attached to. It reveals our assumptions about how life should be. It softens the hard edges of our ego and opens us to compassion for others who also suffer. I once knew a woman named Doris who had spent 40 years regretting a single decision. When she was in her 20s, she had ended a relationship with a man she loved because her parents disapproved. She married someone else, had children, built a life, but never stopped wondering what might have been. Now, in her late 70s, the man she'd left was long married to someone else, living in another state. There was no possibility of reconnecting. Doris had turned her regret into a life sentence, replaying that moment, wondering what she'd do differently if she could go back. One day, Doris's daughter said something that stopped her. "Mom, you've told me that story 100 times. And every time, I notice something. You always talk about what you lost. You never talk about what you learned." Doris was stunned. What had she learned? She'd never asked that question. She sat with it for days, weeks. And gradually, she began to see. That early heartbreak had taught her something about following her own truth. It had taught her the cost of living for others' approval. It had shaped how she raised her own children, giving them more freedom to make their own choices. It had deepened her capacity for empathy when others faced difficult decisions. The regret hadn't been useless. It had been compost. It had been feeding her growth for 40 years without her even knowing it. The Buddha taught about the importance of wise attention, yoniso manasikara. It's the ability to look at our experience, even painful experience, and see it clearly, without the added layers of blame and self-punishment. When we look wisely, we see that every experience, no matter how difficult, contains a teaching. The teaching may not arrive on our preferred schedule. It may not come in a form we recognize. But it's there, waiting to be discovered. Think about your own regrets. The mistakes you've made. The opportunities you missed. The words you wish you could take back. What if, instead of carrying them as burdens, you could compost them? What if you could ask, not, "Why did this happen to me?" but, "What has this taught me? How has this shaped me? What wisdom have I gained that I wouldn't have without this experience?" This doesn't mean pretending that painful things weren't painful. It doesn't mean glossing over real harm, harm you caused or harm you received. It means recognizing that even in the darkest soil, something can grow. The worst moments of your life have also been your teachers. They've shaped you into the person you are today, with all your particular depth and understanding. There's a Zen story about a farmer whose only horse ran away. His neighbors said, "What terrible luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the horse returned, bringing with it 7 wild horses. The neighbors said, "What wonderful luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, the farmer's son tried to tame one of the wild horses, fell, and broke his leg. The neighbors said, "What terrible luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The next day, army officials came to the village conscripting young men for a war. They rejected the son because of his broken leg. The neighbors said, "What wonderful luck." The farmer replied, "Maybe." The story illustrates something essential. We never fully know what's good luck and what's bad. We never fully know what's a blessing and what's a curse. The events of our lives unfold in ways we cannot predict, and their meanings shift over time. What seems like a disaster today may, years later, reveal itself as the turning point that saved you. What seems like a triumph today may, in retrospect, have been the beginning of a long decline. This is why Buddhism encourages us to hold our experiences lightly, including our judgments about them. We don't need to decide, once and for all, whether something was good or bad. We can simply let it be what it was, and remain open to whatever meaning may emerge over time. Let me tell you about Robert. Robert was 78 and had always been the helper, the giver, the one people turned to. He'd raised 3 children, supported his wife through illness, volunteered at his church, and helped neighbors with everything from car repairs to tax returns. Now, in his late 70s, Robert's own health was failing. He needed help with things he'd always done himself. His children offered to drive him to appointments. His neighbors offered to bring meals. His church offered to arrange rides. And Robert refused them all. He didn't want to be a burden. He didn't want to need anyone. He'd spent his whole life being needed, and the idea of needing others felt like failure. This is a common experience, especially among those who've spent their lives in service to others. We learn to give. We take pride in giving. Our identity becomes wrapped up in being the strong one, the capable one, the one who helps. And then, inevitably, age brings us to a place where we need help ourselves. And we resist. We push away the very gifts that others want to give us. We isolate ourselves in the name of independence, not realizing that true independence is an illusion. We are all interdependent, always have been, always will be. Buddhism teaches about dana, generosity. But generosity has 2 sides. There's the generosity of giving, which most of us understand. And there's the generosity of receiving, which is much harder. When someone offers you help, when someone wants to give you something, your acceptance of that gift is itself a gift to them. It allows them to practice generosity. It allows them to feel the joy of giving. It creates connection, mutuality, the beautiful dance of human interdependence. There's a story about a monk who was very ill. His students wanted to care for him, but he refused, insisting he could manage on his own. His condition worsened. Finally, the abbot came to see him. "Why won't you let your students help you?" The monk said, "I don't want to be a burden." The abbot replied, "You're not a burden. You're a teacher. Your students have learned from you for years. Now let them learn from you how to receive." This shifted something for the monk. He realized that by refusing help, he was denying his students an opportunity to practice compassion. He was teaching them, by his example, that needing help is shameful. He was reinforcing the very separation that Buddhism seeks to heal. So he began to accept their help, graciously, gratefully. And in doing so, he taught them something as valuable as any formal lesson. He taught them that receiving is also a form of giving. After 70, life invites you to become gracious at receiving. Receiving help with daily tasks. Receiving the love and attention of others. Receiving the simple gifts that each day offers, a beautiful sunset, a kind word from a stranger, a moment of unexpected peace. The ability to receive is not weakness. It's openness. It's the recognition that we're all in this together, that giving and receiving are 2 halves of one whole, that neither has meaning without the other. I think of Robert, who eventually, reluctantly, began to accept his children's help. It was awkward at first. He didn't know how to say thank you without feeling diminished. But his children were patient. They didn't treat him like a burden. They seemed almost happy to be able to give back some of what he'd given them over the years. Slowly, Robert began to relax into it. He discovered that accepting help didn't make him less of a man. It made him more human. It deepened his relationships. It gave his children the gift of feeling useful, needed, connected. And it taught Robert something he'd never fully understood before. That love flows both ways. That needing others is not failure but the very fabric of human life. I want to tell you about a man named William. William was 83 and had spent the last 40 years not speaking to his younger brother. The original offense was something about money, a business deal gone wrong, accusations on both sides, words said that couldn't be unsaid. William couldn't even remember the details anymore. What he remembered was the feeling. Betrayal. Anger. The righteous certainty that he was right and his brother was wrong. Over the decades, that feeling had become a kind of companion. It was always there, a low hum of grievance that colored everything. Now, at 83, William received word that his brother was dying. Cancer. Months left, maybe less. The news hit him like a physical blow. He sat in his chair for hours, staring at nothing. His daughter found him there. "Dad, are you okay?" William said, "Your uncle is dying." His daughter knew the history. She sat down beside him and waited. Finally, William said, "I don't remember what it was about. I don't remember who was right. I just remember being angry. And now he's dying, and I've wasted 40 years. This is the tragedy of unforgiveness. It doesn't punish the other person. They go on with their lives, mostly unaware of the grudge we're nurturing. It punishes us. It occupies space in our hearts that could be filled with peace. It keeps us tethered to the past, endlessly replaying old injuries, while the present moment passes by unnoticed. And then one day, it's too late to make amends, and we're left with nothing but regret. Buddhism teaches about forgiveness as a practice of liberation. Not because the other person deserves forgiveness. Maybe they don't. Not because what happened wasn't wrong. Maybe it was. But because you deserve peace. You deserve to stop carrying that weight. You deserve to be free. There's a story about two former monks who had been enemies in their monastery days. One had accused the other of something he didn't do, and the accusation had led to his expulsion. Years later, they met by chance on a pilgrimage route. The one who had done the accusing was now old and ill. He recognized the man he'd wronged and braced himself for anger, for recrimination. Instead, the man looked at him with something like compassion. "You look tired," he said. "May I walk with you for a while?" The accuser was stunned. "Don't you hate me? Don't you want revenge?" The man shook his head. "I did, for many years. I carried my hatred like a stone in my pocket. I touched it every day, reminded myself of what you'd done. And then one day, I realized the stone wasn't hurting you. It was only wearing a hole in my own pocket. So I put it down. I've been lighter ever since." Forgiveness is like putting down that stone. It doesn't mean what happened was okay. It doesn't mean you condone it or forget it. It means you stop letting it define your present. You stop giving it rent-free space in your mind. You reclaim your own peace. William eventually went to see his brother. It was the hardest thing he'd ever done. He walked into that hospital room and saw a frail old man who looked nothing like the brother he remembered. They talked for hours. They didn't resolve the old dispute. They barely mentioned it. Instead, they talked about their childhood, their parents, the summers they'd spent at the lake. They laughed about things that had happened 60 years ago. They cried about things that couldn't be changed. When William left, something had shifted. The anger that had been his companion for 40 years was gone. In its place, a kind of quiet sadness, but also a kind of peace. He'd made it in time. He'd put down the stone. After 70, you may have your own stones to put down. Old grievances. Ancient wounds. People who wronged you, or people you wronged. The window for reconciliation may still be open, or it may have closed. But forgiveness doesn't always require the other person's participation. It's something you do for yourself, in your own heart. You can forgive someone who's no longer alive. You can forgive someone who will never apologize. You can forgive yourself, which is often the hardest forgiveness of all. The Buddha said that holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intention of throwing it at someone else. You're the one who gets burned. Forgiveness is opening your hand and letting the coal fall. The other person may never know. But you get to stop burning. I want to end with a story about a woman named Grace. Grace was 96 years old when I met her, living in a small apartment in a retirement community. She used a walker to get around, needed help with most daily tasks, and had outlived almost everyone she'd ever loved. By any conventional measure, Grace had every reason to be miserable. Instead, she was one of the most joyful people I've ever known. I asked her once what her secret was. She thought for a moment, then said, "I don't live in the past. I don't live in the future. I live right here, in this moment. And this moment, right now, is always enough." Grace had discovered something that Buddhism has been teaching for millennia. The past is gone. It exists only as memory, and memory is notoriously unreliable. The future hasn't arrived. It exists only as imagination, and imagination is full of fears and fantasies that may never materialize. The only moment we ever actually live is this one. Right now. This breath. This sensation. This thought, arising and passing away. When we're young, we're so focused on the future that we rarely fully inhabit the present. We're always becoming, always striving, always on our way to somewhere else. When we're old, we can easily get trapped in the past, replaying old memories, reliving old regrets, wishing we could go back and do things differently. But the present moment is available to us at any age. And it's the only place where peace can actually be found. There's a Zen saying, when walking, just walk. When sitting, just sit. Above all, don't wobble. It's a reminder to be fully where we are, doing what we're doing, without the mind wandering off into other times and places. This sounds simple, but it's actually quite difficult. The mind has a habit of wandering. It's always seeking something more interesting, more pleasant, more stimulating than whatever is actually happening. But the peace we seek isn't in some other moment. It's right here, hidden in plain sight, in the simple experience of being alive. Think about Grace, at 96, with her walker and her small apartment and her limited world. What did she have to look forward to? What did she have to look back on? She had this moment, and this moment, and this moment. And she had discovered that each moment, when fully inhabited, contains everything. The warmth of sunlight through a window. The taste of tea. The sound of a bird outside. The simple fact of being conscious, aware, alive. These aren't small things. They're the whole thing. They're what life is made of. The Buddha's last words, according to tradition, were these: all conditioned things are impermanent. Strive on with diligence. He wasn't saying, achieve more. He wasn't saying, become better. He was saying, stay awake. Stay present. Don't slip into unconsciousness. This moment, this breath, this awareness, this is where liberation is found. After 70, you have an opportunity that younger people don't. You have less distraction. Less striving. Less of the endless forward momentum that keeps people from actually being where they are. You have the chance to simply be present, fully, completely, for whatever life brings. Not because you've given up, but because you've finally understood what matters. Grace told me something else that day. She said, you know, I used to think that peace was something you achieved, like a goal you worked toward. Now I know it's something you notice, like the air you're breathing. It's always here. I just had to stop running long enough to feel it. That's the invitation of these later years. Not to run faster, achieve more, hold on tighter. But to stop running. To notice what's already here. To discover that peace isn't something you need to create. It's something you need to allow. It's been waiting for you all along, in this very moment, in this very breath. So here we are, at the end of our time together. We've explored 10 truths, 10 invitations to let go, 10 ways of releasing what no longer serves so that what truly matters can shine through. The weight of waiting for others to bring your happiness. The sacred responsibility of protecting your peace. The museum of the past and the liberation of letting go. The body as teacher, not enemy. The beginner's mind as fountain of youth. The wisdom of letting life live you. The compost of experience. The generosity of receiving. The liberation of forgiveness. The eternal now. These aren't one-time accomplishments. They're daily practices, moment-by-moment choices. Some days will be easier than others. Some releases will feel natural. Others will require all the courage you have. But every release, no matter how small, creates space. And in that space, peace has room to grow. You don't need to become a different person. You don't need to achieve some perfect state of enlightenment. You simply need to loosen your grip, bit by bit, on what no longer serves you. You need to notice what you're holding, feel the weight of it, and ask yourself, am I ready to set this down? And then, when you're ready, open your fingers. Let it fall. Trust that what remains will be enough. Trust that you are enough, right now, exactly as you are. The great teacher Thich Nhat Hanh once wrote, thanks to impermanence, everything is possible. It's because things change that growth is possible, that healing is possible, that freedom is possible. The very fact that nothing lasts means that suffering doesn't last either. Old patterns can be released. Old wounds can heal. Old ways of being can give way to something new, something lighter, something more true. After 70, life doesn't ask you to become more. It invites you to become lighter. Fewer expectations. Fewer regrets. Fewer comparisons. Fewer fears. More presence. More peace. More acceptance. More joy. This is the quiet art of living lightly. Not a distant goal to achieve, but a choice available to you right now, in this very breath. Thank you for spending this time with me at Monk's Temple. If these teachings have touched you, if something in them has resonated, please share them with others who might need to hear them. Subscribe to this channel so we can continue this journey together. And in the comments, I'd love to hear from you. Which of these truths speaks most to your life right now? What are you ready to release? We're all on this path together, learning to live lightly, one breath at a time. Until next time, may you find the courage to let go. May you discover the peace that comes from releasing what you cannot change. May you live your remaining years with lightness, wisdom, and a heart that finally knows it was never about holding on tighter. It was always about learning to let go.